Hello, I'm William Lassiter, and I'll be taking you through this examination of the poetry of the great poet William Blake. William Blake was an English poet. He was born in 1757, and he lived until 1827. He was an English poet, painter, printmaker, a multifaceted man, had many different talents. He lived during the very beginning of the Industrial Revolution in England. And his writing and his printmaking and his painting is very unconventional for his time. But as we'll see, what he was doing was he was not just a conveyor of visions, he was also a man who was very much critiquing the society in which he lived, the ingrained sense of class system, the ingrained sense of people being used for profit, and also the new sense with the Industrial Revolution that human beings were essentially machines. During the Industrial Revolution, there was a great deal of good that came from the rise of the creation of machines and machinery. There's also a great deal of evil that arose from it. And probably one of the greatest evils, we could say, is the use and abuse of human beings, based upon the idea that life should be controlled primarily by reason, cold, calculating reason, and that reason itself was the thing that governs us as human beings. This idea, emerging out of the Enlightenment, was something which led many people to see humans that apparently didn't have reason or who were uneducated as being worth very little, and the use of those people for all sorts of menial jobs, for all sorts of hard labor, was something which Blake objected to immensely. Blake, at a very early age, had visions of the metaphysical world, of greatness, of the other world, of God himself. He saw angels in a tree at a very young age. And all through his life, he was seeing something beyond this world as significant and powerful and beautiful. And that led him then to conclude that it wasn't reason alone which really made us human beings. Rather, Blake says or suggests that the idea of emotion, the idea of imagination especially, was the thing that made us humans. We are not just human simply because of our ability to think. Rather, we are humans because we have intimations of immortality, as his later colleague Wordsworth was to say. Blake goes and creates in this series of poems that we're going to be looking at a series of dual poetry. That is, in Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience, he creates sets of poetry that run together. He intended this to some degree, as the Innocence was published in 1789 and Experience was published in 1794. So by 1794, he was writing further poems about experience that reflected back to his poems of Innocence. And so many poems in Innocence correspond to poems in Experience. And as we will see, these twin poems operate in a way which conveys the idea that Blake had that all life is essentially centered around dark and light, around innocence and experience. Everything that we experience in this world is an admixture of these painful and joyful experiences, these experiences of loss and these experiences of gain, of darkness and of light. Life isn't simply light purely, nor is life simply darkness purely. Blake seems to suggest throughout his poetry that life is a combination of these two different states of innocence and experience. I'm going to take a moment to explain what he means by innocence and what he means by experience. By innocence, he doesn't just mean somebody who is happy and gleeful, although that's part of it. Innocence is itself childlike. It's seeing the world as contained in a grain of sand, Blake says, seeing everything at once, seeing beauty and glory and joy in the world, and seeing the world as a good place. But innocence is also something that's unprotected, it's vulnerable, and it's at the whim of violence and terror that the world seems to bring to it and that other people bring to it. Experience, on the other hand, is that sensation, that sense, that moment of realizing that we are unprotected, and consequently seeing the world, or beginning to see the world as a dark place, as a violent place. Innocence without experience is unprotected. but experience without innocence is dark and terrifying. And so Blake is going to suggest here in these poems that the two have to be mixed in order to have a truly rich experience of human life. I look forward to going through these poems with you, so join with me now as we look at Blake's Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience.